Welcome to Success Matrix. My name is Nancy Chin Wagner, and I am a networking maven. I empower and build confidence in professionals who need to cultivate and explore their networking opportunities that they desire and effectively following up on those opportunities.
And I'm Brent Holtman. I can show you how to attract and inspire a high performance team. Today we have Robert Flanagan, and Rob is president of Wag and Wash Natural Pet Food and Grooming.
Rob, thank you for being on our Success Matrix show. And I just want to let you know, I love that name.
I would
That you
love
have
to
for your
take
company.
credit for it. I have to give all the credit to our founders.
And as you know, Boulder here is great for animal lovers. And I think you're in a great position where you are, and we like to hear a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so Wagon Wash was founded 20 years ago, actually, 1999. And the genesis for the brand was that our two founders, Dan Remus and Jeff Strauss, were both professionals in corporate America and had an aging Dalmatian named Jenny. And they felt terrible about leaving her at home while she was getting older. And so they created a business model, the pet store, that started out as a self-wash with a bakery so they could spend more time with their companion. And I think because 20 years has gone by, like part of that gets a little lost. Like if you really think about this, what it would take for two people, like, there's so many people in America that have an aging dog or an aging cat, but then to actually go create a business model from scratch just so that they could spend more time with the dog, it really speaks to the heart of what the brand is. And that heart has been here for 20 years. And over the 20 years, the model expanded. Today, we do pet food. We do all natural pet food, really high quality pet food. We do grooming, self-wash, and we have an in-house bakery. So you come in and it smells like brownies and
wow,
it smells fantastic. And really what we do, what we say is we don't sell pet food. We don't sell these groomings. Really what the brand is positioned as is we keep them wagging. And we're a place where you go for the maintenance of your companion so that they live a happier, healthy life while they're with us, and that they can live even longer. And what we find is that when you come into your store, we're doing analysis on nutrition, skin, teeth, ears, all these different types of maintenance things that we all need to do, but not everybody knows you need to do those with your dog and your cat as well. And so we do those evaluations when people come into our store, and we help our companions live a more holistic, fulfilled life.
That's wonderful.
It really is.
It's like a human wants to go there and just experience this.
That's one of our jokes is we know the names of the dogs that walk in more than the names of the guests that walk in. And what we do to kind of honor that heart that Dan and Jeff started the business with is, really what at the core is we love the dog or the cat that comes into the store as much as the guests do. So we're treating every dog and cat as if it was our own. And that's why we use the language that it's a companion, it's not a pet. And we don't see the guest as an owner, we see it as a guardian. And we're very specific on that language because it may seem a little trivial, but to us it's really important because it more drives to the values that we live by and what our overall mission is.
Very heartfelt.
And so, Rob, the format that we have for all of our guests is to ask kind of a three-part question and then let you just share whatever comes to mind or whatever's on your heart. And it's, what's your biggest or your greatest strength? What is your biggest opportunity? And then what are the three steps or actions that you're taking in order to leverage your greatest strength to realize that biggest opportunity?
Wow, those are fantastic questions. And one requires me speaking more about myself, which I kind of, as the leader of the organization, I really try to push most things onto the team. But I love that you're asking them, because especially in this environment, that kind of self-analysis is required, right? Even more than it probably was before COVID. So when you talk about the strength, we use that as one of our interview questions. We ask, what's your superpower? You know, it's a fun way to ask the question. And I think for myself, and I would love for my team to see if I'm accurate on this, is I've always been able to kind of innately hear what's being said more than the words that are being said. And let me explain that, because I know that may sound a little off. But when you're working with teams and you're working with a group, there's all these different personalities that are coming in. And there's all these different unconscious storylines that are being played out onto the event. And so I've been able to kind of intuitively be able to separate those two from, hey, here's an event. It's just a fact. And we talk about that in terms of, if there was a camera on this event, here's what happened. Person A said B. Person C was late. And then going into what's the story that an individual or a group is putting onto the event, so that we can get to a disease more than the symptom. So that we can, and this is just, I'm kind of pulling from some of our value statements, is we seek to understand more than we seek to make ourselves understood about something. And really kind of guiding those personalities and growing that team from that perspective is something that I've always loved, been intrigued by. And I've always really subscribed to this idea that business is no different than a family. It's just a different place. Well, although now maybe it's in your home, but you're in front of a screen a little bit more. But it's a family dynamic, and you have all these different personalities and these different opinions. And then how do we come together with a shared sense of values and all be driving in the same direction? And that's always important, but I think a lot of companies are going through these kind of brand shifts and these brand pivots, and it becomes even more essential today than maybe it was before.
That's great. Thank you. Excuse me. That I have to agree, and I'm imagining that as people hear what you've said there, that's going to resonate for an awful lot of us, because it seems that the current situation has really, like we were talking before we started to record, kind of shifted the perception of normal, so that we recognize that just because things were being done a certain way, that may not be something that we can get back to, or even something that's desirable, right?
Yeah, and what I think there was, kind of pre-COVID, no matter how open or authentic a company was, most companies kind of had this sense of compartmentalization between what was going on in your home life and what was going on in your business life. And the expectation, whether said or unsaid, was, hey, you're here at work, you got to put that aside. But I think this is a healthy thing, is that what COVID brought to the table is a sense of vulnerability and trust to your other people you're working with, and saying, and I'm making up some examples here, but hey, I'm really stretched thin. I'll speak for myself. I have a 3-year-old, and the way we had to kind of structure childcare, it affected how I could be present at work. I mean, and these are real things that people are having to deal with, or family members that may have contracted the virus, or anything along those lines. And I think it's important for a company to embrace, even though it's hard and it's a little scary, to say, hey, the full person is okay. The full person is accepted here. Whatever's going on in your personal life, we value all of that here, if you're comfortable in a professional setting sharing. And we did a lot of that, of saying, hey, if you're not comfortable sharing the details, no problem. This is a professional environment. We get it. But if you do want to, at a minimum, say, hey, I'm just dealing with something at home and I got to kind of work through this, we're going to support you in that. And I think a lot of companies are doing that now. And I hope that I can say for Wagon Wash, we're committed to that always continuing. And I hope a lot of other companies do the same, because it's healthier for the world.
I think it's because of Wagon Wash, and not only your company, but a lot of companies, because of the COVID-19, it kind of forces you into these changes that maybe some leaders were thinking about, but didn't take action. And because of what's has happened now, they're taking action, which is for the betterment of your company, as you as a leader, and also your team. And like you were saying, your values are still there. You're just being able to express it, being able to understand what the people are saying, not to just be understood, but to understand what's coming to you and really listening, and which is a big thing for Brent and I, is really listening to not only the leaders, but also your team, because they can help.
Yeah, and it's been more than COVID. I mean, there's other events that have happened, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but the Black Lives movement was deeply affected our team.
Wow.
And those were conversations that not everybody was prepared to have, but were very important to have. And I'm not sure if how those things get separated or whatever, but I think because we had gone through the COVID, we were better positioned to have those type of harder conversations, because we've been having hard conversations already for 2 months at that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just I went into one of our stores, one of our corporate stores, and we had some team members that were at some of the protests, and they've been sprayed by tear gas by police. And just being able to sit there and listen and be able to be present without feeling that I had to go fix this problem or go do anything. It was really more about kind of holding a space and saying, hey, I'm doing my best to be able to see where you are with this. And I think more and more companies are doing that now.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that really, don't you think that ties into what you were talking about with that vulnerability and creating that safe space for the whole person? Because in that, separating your professional life from your humanity, basically, with that leave your problems at home, what we were really saying is put on a mask and don't be real while you're at work. And I think it's really hard for people to really feel safe, to really engage, and to really give their all when they're not being who they really are, right?
Well, and I love how you phrase that. It's so true. And I think that comes to trust. And the language I use with our team is people mistake trust for reliability. So reliability is you're going to get this project on time, you're going to get this done, you'll be at the meeting on time. But trust is I can look at you, Brent. We've met once, but I'm pretty sure if I called you next week and said, a horrible thing just happened in my life, I need somebody I can talk to, you would drop everything and you would talk to me. I trust you, even though I've only met you once. And one of my best friends is the least reliable person on the planet. Like he was a person who married my wife and I, and he was writing the speech a half hour beforehand, freaking everybody out. He's not reliable. But if I called him tomorrow and said, my daughter is ill, I need help, I know this, he would quit his job, move into my basement without me asking, start cleaning the house, and would just take care of things. I trust him with everything in my body and my soul. And what that kind of trust component really comes into play here, because you can't be vulnerable if you don't have trust, because vulnerable is very, very scary. And it's one thing to be, kind of at a team member, middle management, to kind of bring that vulnerability. So like, oh, if I do this, maybe I'm going to get fired. Maybe somebody else is going to take my job. And then as leaders, how do you walk that tightrope? Because you want to be vulnerable, but if you go too far here and you're like, I'm freaking out, I'm scared, nothing's going to work. well, then your team doesn't have somebody that they can rely on to guide them through this.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think this is kind of the work you guys are doing, is that those leaders at the top, maybe that vulnerability isn't with, that abject vulnerability isn't with your team, but you have to resource with other places. And maybe that's within your family network, maybe those are business executive groups. And through COVID, I mean, different executives, myself, I would just call them up and say, hey, I'm in a similar boat. I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. How are you?
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just kind of hear each other out for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of resourcing is important. It may not be for everybody, but I think it's really important for a lot of people.
Yeah, and Rob, I really appreciate you saying that, because you really described an element of the heartbeat of the professional practices that Nancy and I have with our clients, and it really speaks to why we started this this webcast, because I think that for people to hear other successful business leaders, other thoughtful people that they can relate to, is going to really be a benefit to folks in saying, okay, how do I sort this out? And, how do I move forward in a positive way to where I have that balance? And I appreciate how you put that with, because if you just freak out on your people, it's hard to re-roll that once you've done it, right?
Well, that's the thing with trust. It takes years to earn and a moment to lose, right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
And Wagon Wash is a franchise model. So we have our different franchisees that have bought into the system, and it's another one of our kind of mantras is, no matter how the communication is being presented, whether it's anger or wherever, a lot of times what people are really saying is, I'm scared. Like, this COVID thing has really affected my business. I've put everything on the line to do this, and I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a tendency, I think, for any human being to say, oh, well, here are the answers. Because that feels good, but it's a short-term gain, because if that doesn't happen, you lose the trust. And so how do you communicate with somebody of not trying to solve their problem in a professional setting, let them have their feelings and their emotions without rescuing, but at the same time be able to be a presence and being able to hear and kind of provide a container for what's coming up, because there's a lot of feelings and emotions happening.
Yeah.
And it's my team would they tease me about it now, but somebody will say, they'll be like this, like, I don't care about emotions, I don't have them. And it's like, well, no, you do, and you are communicating them. You're just doing this, and you're telling everybody that you're shut down and you're defensive, and that's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. And everybody, this idea or concept that emotions don't exist in a professional setting is not true, and that's proven by science and every study that's ever been done. The emotions just show up differently for different people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the way you described that, holding a space and giving people an opportunity to be heard and not feeling an obligation to have that cookie cutter answer, that's almost profound, because I think there's an awful lot of situations where the reason people get that shut down thing is they've never experienced that. They don't think that they're going to be heard. They're just going to be hit with some cheap solution that doesn't make sense. So why even bother, right?
Or there's a storyline. Whenever I had this emotion in my past, it was shunned, or it wasn't okay, or I got yelled at by my parent, or I'll speak for myself. I mean, it's always great to be vulnerable, I guess, but I should walk the talk. I grew up in a very, very stoic household. My father was a Dutch farmer, worked his way through school, but was very much a bootstrapped farming kind of guy. My mom came from a very abusive background. She rose above that, but there was no space for complaining or negative emotions or anything like that. So I grew up with this keep a tight upper lip, right?
Mm.
Like, and I've had to work through that to be like, wait, no, if some of these things are coming up, you don't have to, I shouldn't say that, but it's more beneficial, it's healthier for the group, the team, and for me as an individual to be open to it.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my language is, hey, if this is going on, no problem, but allow it to be a choice. Don't allow a choice versus a reaction. I'm choosing to protect right now. That's okay. Versus I'm just reacting. I have no awareness that I'm doing it, and I'm just going to be, closed off individual and going from there. And that's not happening in the group. That's a one-on-one conversation. You got to be professional. Well, and I think that's a balance, of the work that you all do is there's therapy, which is one kind of dynamic, and this plays off of therapy in psychology, but it is in a professional environment, and so there's a different use of language.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different use, but it's often very similar approaches.
Mm-hmm. But you're right, Rob, in regards to what you were talking about because a lot of leaders also are reactionary. So they're not thinking, they're listening to what they're saying, and then they react because it's just something that's instinctive. And what it is being a leader that's more being able to listen to what's going on, hearing what's going on. Oh, there's your dog just sprinted up the stairs.
My dog couldn't handle the emotions. She ran away.
I was trying to be calm, asking these.
It's so defensive. So.
No, but the thing is,
But I'm glad that she's taking care of herself.
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
Self-care, yeah. But my thing is that, if we had more leaders that are vulnerable like that, but at the same time,
being able to listen to what's going on and share that and saying, hey, but this is an emotion too, but let's talk about it. And like you said, one-on-one and not in front of other people. And that's what shows a great leader that has value to listening to their team. And it's amazing.
And it's hard. We all have opinions. And
yes.
I'm just using a lot of our internal language, but opinions are somebody's autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
They've had whatever amount of years with something, so they have an opinion. And right and wrong exist way less than people think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a more efficient way. Maybe, I'm not saying there's not right or wrong, but a lot of different opinions about how a project should proceed or we should do this or not. This is just my opinion, so people should take it for what it's worth, is that it's often 6 one way, half dozen of another. We have preferences. And by hearing these preferences and these different opinions and being open to that, oh my goodness, how many projects can be better, stronger, and heard if those dynamics are in place? It's not easy. None of this is easy. And I think that's the misnomer, is that it's easy. But that's why I love the work that you all are doing, is because there's very little training on leadership. You may get a class at an MBA or something, and there's a billion different things online.
True.
But the only way to really learn it is through a professional development program in an organization that has a focus on that. And very few companies have leadership training. And there's nothing more powerful, I think, than teaching even like an entry-level minimum wage person that comes in, but hey, leadership has nothing to do with your position in a company. It has nothing. I've seen leaders as that entry-level person have more leadership skills than a CEO. But I think and I hope with the work you all are doing that more companies will start to kind of implement some sort of leadership training, and then however their leadership style fits in, that's their choice, but there's something in place for that type of coaching and development.
That's
that
topic.
Yeah.
We really like that, because I think that's what we're trying to bring, right, Brent?
Absolutely, yeah. And if I had scripted a great closing for this segment, I couldn't have done nearly as well as you just did, because it's true. It's exactly right, and it really is about bringing our whole selves to the engagement, right? So show up, body and soul, and being all in. And it is everybody's leadership, and great outcomes require that active engagement from the whole team, right? So
Yeah.
Rob, really appreciate you spending the time with us today, and look forward to continuing the conversation with you down the road.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed this, and I hope everybody stays safe.
Thank you. And Rob, I want to just add to what Brent said, and thank you very much. And please look up Rob Flanagan and his Wag and Wash. Love that name. All right. See you next time on Success Matrix. Thank
Take
you.
care.